little Cocker Spaniel, like, what's a bad day? Like, oh, they're the days that, it sounds like that there's some stuff about that that's important. Like, why are we calling it bad? Oh, because it didn't work out the way I thought, or because motivation was harder, or because I didn't. It's like, okay, tell me more about why that's bad. Oh, because it's not how I want to be. Okay, well, it's a not how you want to be day. It's not a bad day.
Welcome to the Sevo Show. We have Peta Slocombe on the podcast today. Peter, are you living your best life?
I am so living my best life every single day. I wake up, and even the tough stuff, and even like I frown a lot when it's just awesome. It's awesome. It's inspiring, and I feel really lucky.
Yeah. How did you get to where you are? What's your secret?
Lots of really hard stuff. I mean, I think one of the things that I learn a lot in my job is that people shy away from hard stuff. They kind of go, oh, this is a bit hard. Maybe I'll quit, or having this conversation about a pay rise or a relationship or whatever. Oh, that's a bit hard. Maybe I'll sort of have it with friends, or have it, and I think there's just a lot of hard things, sort of one by one, that you sort of get to the doorstep of it, and then you go, no, I'm just going to do the hard thing. And then one day you wake up and you feel good at things, or confident at things that you didn't think you would, and you've worked through stuff instead of having this Groundhog Day of patterns. And, I think part of that in my profession is often doing the things that nobody wanted to do. It's easy to talk to, for example, as a psychologist, clients who want to talk to you and have a problem and want to, but when you're thrown in a room with a whole lot of people who are sometimes super resistant, kind of call them like almost like mandated clients or visitors to the process, like someone else wants them to change their lives, or someone else wants them to make different choices. And you just go, I don't want to do this. This is not fun. And you go, well, let's do it. Let's find a way. Let's just, every minute's hard. And then you go, no, that's okay now. And so, yeah, I think lots of hard things, but also feel really lucky that I've been surrounded in my life by people who did hard things. And I never had the assumption that life or career or profession wouldn't be hard. And it just pays off. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get to that career choice?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I think on a lot of levels, human behavior used to kind of puzzle me, as well. I remember paying attention to things even as a kid, and that is around efficiencies, because I do a lot of work with teams and organizations as well as individuals. So, I'd watch, even when we were little, and I'm not a religious person, but, I went to church as a little kid and stuff like that. And I'd watch them like light the candle on the end of each one of the pews, the rows. And I'd be like, why don't they just light them all at once? Like, why is he, and human behavior and expressions and those sorts of things, I was always curious. I think I was also an athlete, and so I was always interested in, if you train hard and you know what people are capable of, how come some people show up more and do well under pressure and some people don't, and those sorts of things. And I also was raised, my sisters and I had a dad who was a quadriplegic before we were even born. And he was amazing. Like, it's just not a sad story. He he would fall and he would be on the ground for hours because we went out, and, he wouldn't get any, and you'd get home and he'd say, someone needs to clean that over there. Like, there wouldn't be like a, oh my gosh, where's everybody been? And you get to see the choices that we have every day if we want to make them. And so I think a combination of seeing Dad be such a happy, fulfilled, productive human being, when other people would say that wouldn't happen or that would be hard. I think being generally curious, I think being predisposed to looking for how you get better, and the role of mindset and stuff as an athlete, I just sort of think they probably all came together. Yeah.
A lot of these conversations come back to childhood,
Yeah, they do.
and I'm fascinated about the child
Yeah.
psychology
Yeah.
because it carries with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's underestimated, because a lot of the time we logically know things, like we might logically know Um, oh, my parents loved me, but if you put yourself back in the role of a small child who sees someone run in the door and like kiss one child but not the stepchild, or like in that moment, the repertoire of a child is not, oh, well, that was probably, that in that moment, the child's reality is, I mustn't be good enough.
Mm.
And then the brain is so plastic, it's actually going, okay, well, that's how the world works. I mustn't be good enough. So as an adult, we go, no, no, I'm definitely good enough. I earn a good wage and I'm married and I have, but this little kind of, this assumption when we were formed, the brain's designed to make a decision in the world about a pattern from a very young age and not to reassess that. And we don't consciously know that at the time. We just bump into it over and over before we kind of go back and say, what is it that's holding me up
Mm.
now? So yeah, I think you really have a
Mm.
good point.
So we'll come back to that. I'm more interested in your progression in your career to get to your career first.
Yeah,
When you're an athlete, at what stage did you go, all right, it's time to study something? It's time to
yeah,
study this thing that I'm interested and curious about.
yeah. I mean, my body made that decision for me with injury, and so um, we trained very differently than they do now, and so obviously, injury and having to sort of quit early, and who knows, what I would have done anyway. But I certainly just went into study after that, and was pretty clear from day one. I would literally constantly read books that were nothing to do with the coursework, and I would keep reading after and so it was never hard work. It was never work. It was just about the world. It
Mm.
was about humans. It was about curiosity. It was, if you can understand something about yourself and then you notice it in someone else, and then, it's like ants at a picnic, right? Oh, there's one. Oh, there's one. And then oh, geez, they're everywhere. You kind of notice something and you might notice somebody get defensive, and then you notice it on a TV show, and then you notice it on a bus, and then and then you start to kind of look at these sorts of trends. So I always loved it. I think it was probably the only thing I could have done, except there was one other career choice I nearly made.
Yeah.
I just wanted to write, but even then, when I look at that, I'm like, oh, Pete, that was that's all about stories. They're all about stories. So. Um,
You can still do that.
I do actually. It's
You
my
do?
favourite thing to do. Yeah, 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 totally. Done a lot of publishing and writing, and it's a guilty pleasure. Just about those observations and trends and patterns.
Observations, trends, and patterns.
Mm,
Right,
yeah.
right. And how old were you when you became a fully qualified?
So I pretty much went straight through 7 years worth. So I was 24, 23, 24 when I finished my master's. I was in a really awesome job from the time I was about 21, 22. And then I just thought, I think this is going to get too comfortable. What scares you? And I did the thing that was the opposite of what I was doing that scared the bejesus out of me.
Why would it scare you?
As a psychologist, I think there's a sort of a comfort in being in the room and closing the door and talking to somebody, and, you know, you're helpful to them because it's countercultural, right? It's not usual for someone to have someone just listening to them and what's important to them and being there for that purpose. But it's very safe as well, and I thought, I'm never gonna know whether I'm a genius or an idiot, like, in this, like, there's a sum of one assessing what my what's the best you can be, and so what I did was I was literally working in private schools, so, reasonably high socioeconomic, reasonably self-motivated to be there, lots of resources, comfortable office, control variables, big budget. Moved to intensive family therapy with kids that nobody else could deal with and family dynamics that nobody else could deal with. At that point in time, they were in the care of the department and or getting kicked out of foster care. Only had 6 sessions to work with them, and we had some of the best therapists in the world sitting behind the mirror analyzing how you're working with them and what you could have done better, and everything's filmed.
How did that feel?
Absolutely petrified. I literally couldn't even eat the days that I was on, so that we would go, like, between sort of 3 and 9 on a Tuesday sort of thing, and if it was your turn that you had all your cases then. Um, Scared, anxious, what's the right way to go? What's the right thing to say?
Because
What's
you
the
got that
right
yeah,
Yeah,
that plastic mold effect
yeah,
on you.
yeah,
It could be you.
yeah,
What's that
yeah,
right or wrong is the permanent mold.
and really caring about what the people behind the mirror sort of thought.
Do you get trained to do that?
No, not at all. No, not at all.
So you don't even get a glimpse of that at uni.
No, not really. I mean, you do role plays and you kind of can watch some videos, but often, of course, ethically, they're actors or role plays of those sorts of situations. But I think it's not even just the client work, it's the ability to be assessed for, well, how did you make decisions then? Why did you choose to go with the adolescent's view of the incident and the father over you didn't ask his view, and that could have been something that,
Mm,
so it was really, it was good to get so anxious that then you can't get any more anxious and you just start doing better work. So I feel really privileged about that, and, really that then I continued to kind of go, "Okay, what's next?"
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
How did you self-reflect on that as you went along? Would you say that that was the hardest point in your career to get through?
The Um, Look, probably just because the further on you go, even if the challenges seem objectively bigger. So I speak to a lot of global founders, CEOs, MDs, but like probably about 30% of my work is speaking to people kind of internationally, leaders, and you could say, gosh, you're about to sit on a call with someone who runs a, $40 billion company and have a conversation with them. Are you nervous? But not really, because, I think early on you don't have much of a repertoire, and the work that you do, the work that you do really matters, right? It's quite life-changing at that point. So yeah, I think the self-reflection has been, kind of really important, and owning your role in things, right? There's no point getting pissed off at a client
Mm,
for not being cooperative, because it's like, guess what? It's my job to find a way to cooperate with that. Oh, the person didn't want to engage. Well, guess whose job that is to find the thing. Everybody wants something. Guess whose job it is to adapt faster to that. So yeah, confronting, probably a lot of self-criticism, um, possibly too many work hours, but I do it all again.
yeah.
Yeah.
When I was a school teacher, my favorite part about the role was every child are their own individual puzzle.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great attitude.
And you start with your 32 individual puzzles in
Yeah.
one room
Yeah.
for 60 minutes
Yeah.
every chance you get, whether
Yeah.
it's 4 periods a week or
Yeah.
whatever. They may have just been put together the
Yeah.
previous session
Yeah.
or completely pulled apart,
Yeah.
whether it's at home or from another teacher they don't get along with, and
Yeah.
then it's your turn.
And I think the other thing, particularly with kids, which is why it's beautiful to think of a teacher having an attitude like that, is sometimes you only see the defenses. You don't actually, people go, oh, that person's really rude. It's like, well, actually, like, get behind that, and then when you do, this whole other world of the human being opens up, where so many people sort of see the front door, say, she's aggressive, he's got no social skills, that person's, a narcissist, whatever. And you go, a lot of those things, what I love about human beings, you look at babies when they're born, like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with babies only because that's how human beings were meant to be, right? If they want help, they ask for help. There's no shame in it. If they feel sad, they cry. If they're scared, they tell you. They look at the world with wonder. They don't wonder if they're supposed to be acting like they're not worried or that they know what to do. They stare at people because they're curious. And then we get to this point where we start saying, oh, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to act like I do. And I am so nervous about being ejected that I'm going to act like I don't care about anybody else. And there's all these. They're all just like layers we put on top. But
Mm,
humans aren't born broken.
no.
And that's always that's your version of the puzzle thing for me. Like nobody's born broken. What's happened in this story that has made people's behaviors make sense to them at the time,
What was the nurture? People don't get born. People aren't born broken through nature,
yeah.
apart from like your
Sometimes
physical
it's a
stuff.
rarity,
Yeah.
but even psychologically, yes, but it's a rarity,
Mm.
Yeah.
And then the nature comes in, and the nurture comes in and
Yeah.
un just breaks
Well, I
breaks
think
things.
it tries to, people talk about dysfunction all the time. Oh, this family is dysfunctional, the person's dysfunctional, this
Mm.
workplace is
Family
dysfunctional.
dynamics.
It's not dysfunctional, it's functional for them in that environment, right? So if you say, oh, it's dysfunctional, everybody can see there's tension and no one's talking about it. Well, there's probably a function in that, right? There's probably something about that that makes sense, right? Because if we do talk about it, maybe someone will lose their temper or maybe things will get out of control or maybe so, it's kind of when you talk to people about things being broken and what they change and how they can get out of patterns that they nobody, it's a little bit like, loss aversion, behavioral economics. Nobody wants to have something taken off them,
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be smacked into a corner with repetitive, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Reframing it, sit down, get curious with it, go, man, what would that be about? Like, you seem like a really loving person. What would make people feel like you're actually not interested in working on this relationship? Or what would make, and so, I think for me, I think that's such a beautiful analogy that you made. It is a puzzle. It's a story. It's a curiosity. People ask me how I can sit with people behaving really poorly, like people who have been accused of, sexual harassment or, behaviors in families that are not appropriate or all of those sorts of things. And I'm like, I'm curious about like how do you make sense of this? How do we get to this? How it's fascinating and it allows you to not judge, to sit with people with this, kind of
Mm.
curiosity, as well as being pretty blunt with people sometimes.
How long have you been in this field for?
33 years.
Have people become more predictable?
Oh, it's an interesting one. I think people have changed a lot. I've noticed people change a lot in every area of what I do, whether it's an athlete, an executive, a teenager, a lawyer. Like I've noticed people become, I think, I wouldn't say predictable. I think one of the things I've noticed is that human beings have stopped. A phrase I would use is that the tail wags the dog, right? People look at the external environment and they react to it. And I think we've lost the ability to, or the space to be able to say, I mean, you look at like focus or, people's ability to focus or relationships or those sorts of things. Everyone's like, oh, okay, how do I be more assertive and how do I switch off my devices and how do I and it's like we've got this massive list of to-dos and things to sort of um, execute and plan and organize. But this is the thing, we need to sort it out at this end,
A
right?
mindset.
Actually, a mindset, like actually, well, what's important to you, and taking devices off people and uncluttering a desk and or pulling down the blinds in a dark room to get people to sleep, like, that's all fine, but, like, this is this incredible engine room that we have here, and I think when you talk about how have people changed over time, I think we've lost the ability to deliberately drive and process, like, again, um, what's important to me in life? What do I want this relationship to look like? What deserves my focus? All of those sorts of things. And we've just gone to this, I will I will spend this incredible resource I have here. I will get on social media and whatever comes at me randomly is the thing that I will process, and I think then you look at things like, initially Google and stuff, like, you're at a dinner party and someone says, "Oh, who was that actor?" Again, everybody's gonna Google it. No one's gonna bother to remember that or process it. They're just gonna Google it, and now you get AI and, "Oh, what should I do in this situation?" You ask ChatGPT, and you're not actually thinking about, well, actually what I'm a human, I'm writing my own story, I have a voice, I I have a fear that people will get more passive in the world, and I think that it dilutes people, and I think And so when we think about how people change, like I said, I think that we've got this kind of engine room here that we can then, when we get that right, carry it everywhere through the world rather than sort of constantly sort of looking to the external environment.
Would you say that critical thinking is on the decline?
Yeah, critical thinking, absolutely. Self-awareness, absolutely.
Self-esteem?
Self-esteem, absolutely.
Mhm.
It's all other led. Did they like what I do? Did they, tag me? Did they? All of those sorts of things. And it's not what we were designed for. The human biology has not changed in thousands of years, and our external environment is unrecognizable. And there's a misalignment there, in terms of us not living lives that we're designed for.
How do we break out of that through this tribalism that's growing us into a really disconnected, but also apparently connected
Yeah.
environment or society?
Yeah.
How do we become the cavaliers that push through and go, you know what? This isn't how we're designed.
Yeah.
But like for children, for example,
Yeah.
kids who are not allowed to have social media or have Snapchat, but their entire year 7 class has a Snapchat group chat.
Mm.
And that one kid feels missed out because they go to school the next day and everybody's talking about what was discussed last night on Snapchat.
Yeah.
Or worse, everyone's bullying that one kid because they're not on Snapchat
Yeah.
and they've been digitally secluded.
Yeah.
So it's a group of beings
Yeah.
that are allowing this to
Yeah.
happen. I mean, it starts with the parents,
Yeah.
the teachers.
Uh-huh.
How do we break out of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and in some respects, I'm not an interventionist in terms of, you know, ditch the phones and ditch Snapchat and all those sorts of things. I think that just is what it is. Chat's not gonna not exist just because, we've told Johnny to. I mean, obviously too early is a challenge, but for me, I think it's two things. It is all about was probably the one thing. It's all about the percentage of time and focus and, so what else are we doing? What else are we doing in terms of self-awareness? What else are we doing in terms of just pausing to contemplate that there is an other in the world, that there is another variable, which is our own preferences and our own. I genuinely believe I'm probably more optimistic than most people, given that I see the worst of some of this stuff. I genuinely believe that it's going to circle back. I think that, lots of things are a moment in time, and in the moment it looks horrendous. Um, but I think there's so many things about human nature that just, you look at when there's fires and floods and all those sorts of things, and people don't have devices and they don't have colleagues and they don't have the internet, and people come together instantly in that moment. Nobody plans it, but they come together and they help each other and they get connected.
Mm.
And you look at the worst moments of humans' lives, right? So you look at airports and hospitals and funerals and those sorts of things, and humans are amazing in those. Everything's in perspective, everything matters. The connection. Humans can't recreate the joy that they have in each other, or the sorrow that they have in each other being lost, in the same way as, you'd think that if you ask people to rate what's important, it's devices or social media, if you ask kids, but I there's this massive human experiment that says that everything that we say we want in a heartbeat goes when someone is in hospital. You go, "Mate, I'll just give everything up everywhere for that moment." And when you're at a funeral and you look around and you go, "Far out, my car, my house, my job, the number of people who like my post, nothing matters." So I think we continue to have these moments in time, these innately human moments that haven't changed, where we are just back where we are. I think that, we need to auto-correct with more stuff around, I'd kind of call it psychological literacy in terms of, you know, So, for example, with things like stress and resilience and, everyone's a little tired of those terms, they're sort of dated and old and, yeah, bounce back and be positive but I think, what I would say to people is sometimes is, so for example, there's a stressful event like, um, bullying or a financial event or something else that happens in people's lives. We can't change that the event's happened. What we can change is, does this take 100 widgets of my identity, or does this take 7 widgets of my identity? Is this going to stay on my mind for 100% of the next 7 weeks, or is it going to be 37% of the next 7 weeks? Like, we have those choices, and that's what gets exciting for me, because you can't stop any of those things from happening. But I think that's what I wish the kids kind of knew. You are going to get bullied at some point in time, right? The world is full of the one thing that connects us, which is actually suffering and burden and other human beings. And I sometimes say to people, and this is a bit of a diversion, but people expect me to kind of think, oh, you wake up and you say your affirmations and everything's positive and the world's going to be good and everyone's kind. And you know what? I sometimes feel like saying, guess what? We're all sitting at the breakfast table. Between us, 37 things are going to go wrong today. We don't know how big or how small or how close together, or whether they'll all be loaded on one person or whether they'll be spread out. But every other breakfast, table around the world is going to have that as well. Let's come back and figure it out, and let's not wake up and expect that there aren't going to be them. But let's make sure that when those 37 happen, we're there for each other. Let's make sure that we recover faster than we used to. Let's make sure that we learn from them so they don't keep boomeranging back to us. Make sure that they don't define our identity. Make sure that they don't ripple into 17 other events. So you lost your job, but then you get angry and bitter about the company, and then your marriage suffers because you're angry and bitter,
Mm,
and then your kids don't want to be at home very much because things are tense, and then those kids, so the only choice we have is how long and how far the tough things ripple and how quickly do we learn from them. So I think if we taught kids stuff like that,
mm.
and I know that there is resilient stuff, but I think we can give really artificial ideas about the world, that it's all doom and gloom and we should huddle together in this sort of social media group and lament it, or that if you're bullied, it's terrible and awful, and it is, and there's no question about that, and it's life-changing stuff. And everything puts something else in front of you. My dad became a quadriplegic. What that put in front of him is the chance to figure out, how can you live a life that you want to live, even though the circumstances are hard. An elite athlete gets injured 4 weeks before the grand final. Yep, great. You want to go into a broody, angry kind of wreck, or you're going to say, I've got 4 weeks to sit in the coach's war room and hear about strategy and tactics that I wouldn't
Mm,
normally do. I've got
yeah.
4 weeks to do. So there's just always something, and I think we need to encourage kids to learn that stuff.
How do you train someone, or how do you learn how to have that second thought come through to take action from
Yeah,
this from the first thought? Because we can't control our first thought.
yeah,
It's the second thought of action.
yeah. How do you learn to kind of control that, or how do you learn to kind of pause and
Yeah. So, for example, an event happens.
yeah,
It's not a pleasant one.
mhm,
Let's go with, you got
yeah,
injured.
yeah,
Your first thought is, you're injured.
uh-huh,
You're out of the game.
yeah,
You may miss the grand final.
yeah,
Everyone's relying on you.
yeah,
You may have cost everyone
yeah,
who supports you, chance of victory.
mhm,
How do you train to make the second thought a positive one,
yeah.
and more importantly, to take action on the first thought?
Yeah, yeah. It's a good question. And again, I think it's both. I think you have to have that first thought, and I think that's real. And I think you need to make space for it. And I think a lot of people are super quick to, oh, focus on the positive, focus on the positive. And again, it just keeps popping up again, the grief, the anger, the frustration. So I think the task is to say, that's that's tough. Didn't plan that, didn't expect that, didn't see that coming. And then I sometimes I sometimes play this game with myself, and consequently it's a strategy at times for clients, and one of the games is, in this moment, if we could pause and drone view the universe, exactly the same thing just happened to 100 other people around the world, right? Just before the Olympics, just before the grand final, 100 critical players into their team just got injured. How can I be the best one of those 100 in how I act, right? So nobody gets to have a reality where they didn't get injured, but someone has done it and gone and, drunk drive that night
Yeah,
because they're so someone's done it and screamed and carried on and said something on social media, and someone's done it and quit because they were so frustrated. How can I be the one of those
yeah,
people in that sort of block? So I think that's the first one. And the second thing is, um, you know, I think uh, I think ultimately with the ripple thing that I mentioned before, um, as you said, with that first and second kind of thought, and that Buddha kind of thing that says, the first sword, you can't do anything about. The second sword hurts the most. Is okay. How quick can I catch it before it becomes a second, third, or fourth
mm,
problem? The third sort of strategy that I sometimes, again, play with myself, which is where some of these sort of strategies come out in client conversations, is, um, okay, this is a game of Wheel of Fortune, and I've just spun up injury. On there is injury for 6 weeks, injury for 5 years, no injury, but your grandmother gets assaulted next week, um, no injury, but someone else on the team gets diagnosed with a medical issue. Like, there's all these good things on there, but there's maybe one or two things on there that, and you just go, "Do you wanna spin again?"
of
And I
course.
and
Are
I
you
go,
alive?
"Yeah." Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of say yes, but you also say something. That other thing that you just don't want could come up there. So do you wanna go with this thing that you
Yeah.
know and go, "Man, 4 weeks, that's horrendous, but I have been signed again for next season, and there was no guaranteeing that, that I will be the difference in the team, and
Mm.
how can I be a better support for the team than I would have been able to be if I was playing?" So,
I
yeah.
like how you span the 100 other people
Yeah.
out there that
Yeah.
are in your same situation,
Yeah.
because when I have done that before, whether it's a friend or a child who would say, "Oh, but that's them. I'm in my problem." That's
Yeah.
not helpful for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I like how you span it to how can you be the best out of all of them
Yeah.
to come out,
Yeah.
Not that you're comparing.
No, it's not, but it's just it brings out there is still a task in front of you, right? I'm in a club I didn't kind of want to be in. If you were playing cards, you'd say if, 100 other people in the world got dealt exactly the same set of cards that you did at your first deal, and I don't really play cards, so who knows about the language here, but, there's a lot of people playing with the same level of cards as you've got. Sure, spend all your life kicking the universe in the shins for dealing you these cards, but how can I do better than most people? And and I think again that's the task. It's the task for teams. It's the task for teenagers. It's but I also think that there is always a wild card in that challenges are in a game of snakes and ladders. Challenges also have a ladder on the field to what do you want to get better. So say a partner has an argument with you and you're upset about it, or say you nearly get sacked from a job, or in that moment, say a customer, you work at a shop and someone complains about you, right? If you had a button to go, could that not please happen? You would press it. But ultimately, when it happens, you got this chance to go to the boss and say, I didn't handle that well. I would like to do better at that. Give me some feedback on that. Is that something I do a lot? Can I go and apologize? Now, if you go and have a conversation with that colleague or that customer or those sorts of things and say, well, that didn't go so
That
well.
was average.
I know.
Yeah.
Um, your relationship with them will be stronger, has the potential to be stronger than if you never even intersected with them,
Yeah.
right?
Or
Or you
hide,
or
avoid the
you hide,
problem.
avoid, blame, minimize,
Yeah.
those sorts of things. So that's the ladder that you get to go up in those moments. They're
Mm.
the times when you get to lift. If you're a boss and you have to sack 10 people, they're the times that you might become lifelong friends with those people.
Why do people are not as self-aware as they used to be?
I agree.
Why?
I think there's so much data coming into the world, like we used to, and it's a cliched example, but we used to have time during the day that we might be on a bus or a train or in a fish and chips queue or a coffee queue to order something, 20 years ago. And you're in a queue. What can you do? Oh, I'm tired. Why am I tired? That conversation we had last night, I don't feel good about that. Well, wonder what I don't feel good about. Like, what's that about? Now, the second we're in a queue, email, social media, phones, all of that sort of
Mm.
stuff. And I think that that's why mindfulness, I think, has become big because there's this artificial creation of be still and figure out, just be in the present for a
Mm.
moment. And I think we had this little kind of clean out spam folder function, self-cleansing function that came in those silences. Whereas now, oh, I'm lying awake in bed. Oh, well, that's terrible. I might not sleep tomorrow. I might have a difficult thought. I might process this email that I got.
Better get on my phone.
I better get on my phone or I better take something. I better have a beer. I better take something to sleep. I better go to the doctor and get melatonin.
Yeah.
Um, and so we get uncomfortable with that silence because it's hard, that self-reflection, because it's harder to control than everything else. So I think we're not good with uncertainty. I think humans hate uncertainty, and we used to be really good with uncertainty. Once upon a time, our grandmothers had a son go off to war, and they didn't hear from them for 5 years, right? Didn't know alive, dead, all alive, back tomorrow, never coming back. You just had to press on with it. Now we're like, oh, well, I just broke up with Mark. Oh, what if he's gonna be at the party? Oh, well, I'll Google my friends and I'll check where he is on Snap Maps and I'll look on social media here and so we're not good with uncertainty. So when we're alone with our thoughts and we don't know if something's gonna come up, it's uncertain and it's uncomfortable and we start to kind of go, well, that sucks. It's better if I just numb that out by flicking
Mm.
through Instagram. So I think God, the universe, our designer, whatever you want to call it, has given us this ability to have this little spam folder sorting room and go, you file, or no, I can't file that. I don't understand why I got mad in the meeting today. Okay, think, pull out all that was it. We have that, but we don't use that. We just go, nah, there's a button that I can press here, literally, to sort of stop that. And yeah, it's again, we have this amazing functionality, and we do everything we can not to be alone with it.
Yeah, that's wild. My wife and I talk about it all the time. She mentioned the other day, not that we're making fun of these businesses, but the fact that they need to be there is quite
Mhm.
sad. You go somewhere and pay someone to
Yeah.
breathe.
Yes. To breathe,
What?
to float in water,
The f-
to to have an ice bath, which is awesome, by the way. The data on that's really clear, but to have an ice bath, to feel alive, to stimulate our, it's it's insane that we've artificially kinda created this stuff in a way when we had it all along. We have social networks, but we pay, we artificially, dating apps, all of those sorts of things. And it's a classic case of we need it. Humans' needs are similar and not complicated. And yeah, we've just made it so much more complex than it is.
What's the real antidote?
Um, Such a good question. And I think something that I often come back to, and I suppose I'm a scientist, but I don't feel like one. I come back to what happens in biology, like what were we designed for? I said do hard things, before. Like everything that burns down grows back stronger and or needs some function where it gets sort of traumatized, right? A blister on the skin, whatever, before it can
Hypertrophy.
heal, all that sort of stuff. So
Mm.
So I think one of the antidotes is let's actually go back to what we were designed for and just sort of think about what the basic human need is rather than what we're told or what we think or what, what the algorithm says on social media. And I think the other thing is space and curiosity, because I genuinely believe that if you have the space to reflect and to think and, like you might resist being alone with your thoughts, but if you can't help it, if you're somewhere on a plane and there's no internet and you're traveling and there's no distractions and that sort of stuff, you come back more relaxed and more connected and with more perspective, right? The universe had to wrench it out of your hands by getting you stuck on a tin can in the air with no social media and no ability to sleep and no ability to, but so I think the antidote is actually noticing, when do we actually thrive, and just remembering that we actually have this innate ability to sort of do that.
I mentioned Matthew McConaughey a lot
Mhm.
on this topic. He journals. He speaks about
Yeah.
journaling,
Yeah.
and he mentions that he would journal his good days, but
Yeah.
he also would journal his bad days.
Uh-huh.
When he would have those bad days, he would open up his journal to the good days
Hmm.
to see the variables that were
That
written
led to that. Yeah.
and created that good day.
Yeah.
The people you're with, the activities you're doing, the, I guess, habits or
Yeah. Yeah.
routines, even though some people go, oh, routines are full of it.
Yeah.
But if you're having a good day, you want to have more of those good days and
Yeah.
avoid the bad ones. And it all comes back to that
Yeah.
mindset.
Totally. I love his stuff. I love how he talks about kind of like not leaving crumbs, in terms
Mm,
of your future self, like recognizing that. So instead of things like, what am I supposed to do? What will people judge me for doing? What will I be sort of ejected from the tribe for? And all of that sort of stuff. It's like, what will my future self thank me for? And that might be as simple as making the bed in the morning because I come home and go, oh, how cool. I'm coming home
mm,
to a less cluttered, those sorts of things. I think journaling is an amazing tool. I think it's self-therapy, and I think there's this natural ability. I even sometimes have a frustration, like, well, a curiosity when people say a bad day, and I go like, "What?" Like a cocker spaniel, like, "What's a bad day?" Like, "Oh, they're the days that," like, it sounds like that there's some stuff about that that's important. Like, why are we calling it bad? Oh, because it didn't work out the way I thought, or because motivation was harder, or because I didn't. It's like, okay, tell me more about why that's bad. Oh, because it's not how I want to be. Okay, well, it's a not how you want to be day. It's not a bad day. And there's a big difference in what you do with that. If you feel like bad days, bad days, bad days, bad days, it's like, no, you're not a bad person, and it's not a bad universe, and it's not an unlucky period. It's not how I want to be for very long. Okay, it's really good to kind of feel that. Like, this like a compass point, right? This is
mhm.
not how I want to be, or this is not where I want to be. I think the other really important thing about journaling is, we think in the smallest data points. We have all of these, like, hundreds of thousands of half thoughts every day. Oh, I'll go here. Oh, no, I won't go there because that, oh, yeah, yeah. And when you write, you have to take all of these and you have to go, no, no, what's the end of the sentence? Like, what, what actually, of all of those things, what is the thing that, how do I want that? And it slows us down into things that we can act on and reflect on. Whereas thoughts, there's just different ones there.
When you have a thought process or you have specific actions you need to take to
Yeah.
complete a specific task or project,
Yeah.
but then something derails you
Yeah.
or something ventures you off onto a side quest,
Yeah.
what do people, well, a lot of people start to blame something like ADHD.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'll get a a big response. People have very strong views about ADHD. Um, my view on it, of working with more than 50,000 people who think they have it or thought they had it and didn't, and did have it but didn't, and had diagnosed but diagnosed out of a newspaper, or all sorts of things, is firstly, and it is definitely a thing. I think it's definitely a problem, and a lot of people need help and support with it and have impaired functioning as a result of it. But we have designed ourselves for ADHD these days. Like, you don't need we get information in 4, 5, 10, 15-second bursts, and then we get another one, and then we get
Mm.
another one, and then we get another one. So that is the brain's equivalent of a threat response. And the other thing is that we know more about ADHD now as well, which is a little bit controversial, but I can't say that, I definitely need to say that I've noticed the same thing, is quite often when kids are exposed to trauma, and trauma could be a really visible kind of, or it could be something that nobody sort of would call a trauma, but it was for the child, because trauma obviously changes the brain. You've got people learn to dissociate. They learn to just, "Oh, I'm in this situation, I'm a child, I can't impact on the pain there or the violence there or the sense of failure here, or I don't have the strategies for it." And so the brain has this incredible protective mechanism that in adults and post-traumatic stress, becomes a numbness and literally time slows down and all of that. But we learn to dissociate things, just to disconnect from things that are uncomfortable. And so I see a lot of the time people have had experiences that they notice are, you know, it's just a functional way again of them removing themselves from a situation, whether it's I don't understand that in class, or this stuff at home is difficult, or I feel like I don't fit in. So, I mean, I think that, the fact that ADHD has increased with the changes to technology significantly, and that we've trained ourselves into this, and the fact that even if you're diagnosed with ADHD, whether you want to be medicated or not, or need to be, you still need to develop some strategies for changing that behavior. And yeah, like I said, I think we're designed to adapt. We're adapting in a way that's unhelpful, and we need to, really recognize that that's not necessarily a pathology.
Mm,
Yeah.
I believe that there are techniques that you can be trained
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
something.
Yeah, I agree.
Medication is a band-aid.
You'd see that in kids as well, right? In your background? Yeah.
But
It's a
you
quick it's
have
a quick win. It's
you
a
have 1 hour in the day as a school teacher
Yeah.
with them, and you wanna give them the guide
Yeah.
to try
Yeah.
for a certain amount of time to then reflect, journal, and come back to me to give me
Yeah.
the results to go, "Do you feel better?"
Yeah.
But they just don't get the chance.
Yeah.
They don't they want to, but they don't see that they need to,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
And it's the same with adults. Like, I get a message every day, "Sev, I hate my job.
Yeah.
Sev, I wanna do what you do."
Mhm.
I was like, "You don't wanna do what I do."
You don't even know what I do. You
No.
see a little bit of what I do.
You
Yeah.
don't know that my day to day. You don't
Yeah.
know that I wake up at 3 a.m. with a lot of
Yeah.
thoughts, but I get excited about those
Mhm.
3 a.m. thoughts.
Yeah.
I wish I could take notes without going on my phone, but I'll wake my wife up with the
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
I see these people and I want to help all of them, but I can't help any of them
Mhm.
unless they can help themselves.
Yeah.
So I have a test. I give them a couple of quick actions that they could take.
Mhm.
And to me, they're quick actions because they're achievable within the same hour that I give them
Yep.
that action
Mhm.
or those actions. I give them 3. That's enough. And then I give them a week
Mhm.
to do it. They realistically can do it all in 1 hour.
Yep.
And most of the time, I just hear excuses
Mhm.
or nothing at all
Yep.
for the longest time.
Yep.
Why is that? Sorry to interrupt one last time. This is actually a sponsored post. If you need to run ads for your service-based business and you don't know how, there is one agency I would trust in the entire country and the world probably, Where You, spelt WHERE and then the letter U. They literally teach you how to run Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and create a whole funnel for you to get more business. And I use them myself. They've taught me how to do it, and I get all of the business, which is fantastic. If you want to learn how to run ads properly and dominate your industry and win all of the clients, hit up Where You. Back to the episode.
I think there's a number of things. I don't think humans believe in themselves that much. Like there's this kind of resistance, there's procrastination, there's a lot of self-sabotaging behaviours that people engage in. I think people make it harder than it is, and I'm not obviously I speak to a lot of people who, for example, with depression, have a lot of trouble even getting out of bed and getting dressed or having a shower. So I really recognise that it's a tough thing to do, but I think sometimes people just get into the habit of passivity and or helplessness, and I also think that ultimately the fact that they've reached out for help and they're probably not doing the things that they already know are helpful. That's always curious to me as
Mm.
well. People kind of go, "Oh, I want to lose weight. Can I see you?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I'm thinking, I bet you if I gave you $10 million to do these behaviors for a week, like whatever, like you would be capable of doing them, right? So it's actually a motivation issue. So instead of realizing this is just a pure human motivation issue, they're like, I'll feel better if I buy some exercise shoes, pay for a therapist, go on your waiting list, do these things. And so they feel like that's the anxiety reduction thing. Like, oh, I'll reach out to Seb. You know what I'll do? I'll reach out to Seb. But they're probably not already doing the things that they could do for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, the accountability factor that I've discovered in what I can offer to people
Mm-hmm.
is I like it. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to have them rely on me
Yeah.
and for my accountability. They're responsible for themselves.
Yeah.
I say this in every episode. And when I started my first business, which was personal training,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to study psychology
Yeah.
purely because I wanted to get into the minds of
Yeah.
my clients to
Yeah.
go, what makes them go and turn up to their
Yeah.
session?
I love that.
What is the flip
Yeah.
of them to go, not today,
Yeah.
and give me some excuse? Why is it that 1 to 2 out of 20 of my clients actually listen to everything, do it, and get the results that they actually wanted?
Yeah.
What happens to the rest of them? Am I able to solve those others
Yeah.
in their mindset? But then I just didn't want to do the 5 to 7 years of study it.
Yeah. If there was another word other than solve, what would that be for you? You said to sort of solve their mindset. So,
For them, it would be, I guess, a breakthrough for them,
yep.
their
Yeah.
personality,
Yeah.
their mindset to go, I need to do this.
Yeah. Yep.
And I discovered the Socratic method,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been a real fun exercise
Yeah.
on people
Yep. Just dusting away
because
what's,
it calls them out,
yeah.
but they don't like getting called out, even
Yeah.
though deep down inside they
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So then it's like a defense mechanism. I'm trying to tiptoe
Yeah.
to go, you know what the problem is.
Yeah. Totally.
You're a lazy,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
You like chips more than you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Or with the kids,
Yeah.
it could be a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
You know what the problem is. Your parents are separated and you don't get enough attention from either of them.
Mm-hmm.
But you are in this world for yourself now. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the kids.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And for the adults as
Yeah.
well, minus the personal training, you are working a 9 to 5 that you chose once upon a time.
Yeah.
You agreed to the salary.
Yeah.
You took on the debt for the house that you're in
Yeah.
because you thought that the salary you would have to the job that you were doing
Uh-huh.
was going to be sustainable forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you weren't told that from the beginning. And that's where I see most people now.
Yeah.
And they're calling out for help.
They're stuck.
I haven't figured it out properly,
Yeah.
but I feel like I'm living my best life,
Yeah.
not a better life than them.
Yeah.
But they come to me because I see in their eyes going, you're lucky.
Yeah.
Well,
You're
I
not lucky.
created.
You're not lucky. I mean, you might be, but there's those.
I'm
Yeah.
grateful that
Yeah.
my self-awareness,
Yeah.
my self-esteem, and my, I guess, the ability to reflect
Uh-huh.
was instilled from my mother
Yeah. Really.
at an early age.
Yeah. How did you do that?
We migrated from Russia and not speaking English,
Mm-hmm.
was already, oh,
Yep.
let's tease him. Let's bully him.
Yep.
Let's teach him all the signs that he can give to the teachers.
Yep.
Let's teach him new words that the teachers, that he can tell the teachers. And yeah, that was my first
Wow.
experience in bullying.
Yeah.
Because before I moved to Australia, I didn't have any concepts of what bullying
Yeah.
was.
And what did your mum teach you? How did she teach you about self-reflection?
She pretty much just kept saying the same thing. You are the most important person in this world to yourself.
Yep.
Nobody else matters but you.
Yeah.
She didn't expand on that. She just kept peppering that.
Yeah.
And over time, I figured it out.
Yeah.
I'm no good for anyone else if I'm no good for myself.
Yeah. And I think there is that kind of you're writing your own story, your own destiny thing.
Yeah.
Nobody else can do that for you.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To your kind of question about, accountability and, whether it's a PT example or not, I find you just mentioned language, and I find that language is really critical to we have all these thoughts and feelings and complexities and needs, and then we just distill them into a word, right? These days, an emoji even, which is worse than a word. And those words become unhelpful.
Yeah.
So I know somebody who always says, "Oh, I just have no self-discipline. No self-discipline." And I'm like,
What are you doing about it?
well, yeah, I'm like, what does that mean? And it's almost like, oh, I was born a left-hander. Oh, I was born with no self-discipline. And you get people saying things like, oh, I didn't turn up because to the gym or whatever it is. Life's just been hectic. Oh, hectic.
I'm
Oh,
overwhelmed.
and you just go, what is hectic? Like, oh, I've done okay, so you didn't turn up to the gym because your uncle arrived to stay with you 2 days ago. And you break this stuff down, and you just get curious about it, and that Socratic kind of piece is important
Yeah.
there as well. But I don't think you can work with something otherwise. So people often say to me, "Oh, I have no work-life balance." Like, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean to
Get
you?
to the bottom.
Yeah. Oh, I would like to spend more time with the kid. Okay, but you're not. So what do you like to do more, or than spending time with the kids, or what do you need to do more than that? Or this is not what I expect. Okay, well, do we then review how accurate what you expected was, or do we? Is this a question about change, or And I think we tell ourselves these things, like oh, it's a disconnected world, or okay, but you have choices, and what does that mean? But those things stop people. Oh, I can't change careers because of the mortgage. Well, there's not two levers in the world. There's 37 levers available to you. Change your expectations, or have a difficult conversation, or start researching or studying something else, or go to different banks, or look at moving to different. Like, don't just tell me I have no choices here, because there's 37 levers that you can pull there, even if you pull some of them just a little bit.
What do they have that defeatist mentality though?
Again, I think that people are so overwhelmed in general that, the brain has the ability to process things at quite a granular level. But I think we just use it as a blunt instrument, like, oh, he's talking about himself. Oh, he's a narcissist. Really? Like, maybe there's a whole lot of other, maybe he's insecure, maybe he's scared, and so I think we bucket, we're so overwhelmed, and into our earlier conversation about that reflective space, we we kind of bucket things into, oh, I can't, and oh, this will never change, and oh, he said this at the staff meeting when I first started, so therefore I'm never going to. And I think we make assumptions and we lock them away as facts, rather than to kind of go, well, yeah, of course he was talking about himself, but what does that sound like the third time? Or instead of trying to shut him up, what is the thing if you say, tell me more? Like, what, and again, I think we need to recognize that there's a there's a whole floodlight lit area of levers and choices and options, and we get decision fatigue and all of those sorts of things. And so ultimately, we just go, oh, I can't do it, and that's it. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You say that our views of ourselves are outdated,
yeah,
often outdated.
yeah, yeah,
Our views of other people also outdated.
Absolutely. Again, firstly, our views about other people are often formed with really minimal information.
And assumptions.
And many assumptions.
Yeah.
Again, assumptions were designed to keep us alive. Like a baby crawls towards something, it's hot, it hurts, everybody screams at them. We now learn if it's red and it's glowing and it's hot and they tell me not to touch it, I better not touch it. Well, we make an assumption about anything that meets that criteria. But again, in the view of so many pieces of information coming in and us wanting to sort of preserve energy, we just kind of go, oh, as I said, he's not interested in me, she's selfish, he's a taker, not a giver. We kind of get these kind of blanket and we do that about ourselves as well. We have all of these stories and memories and thousands of interactions, and we can't remember them all. So we just we remember the person that broke up with us and the job we missed out on and what my stepmother said in an argument, and we go, oh, I'm not a people person. So we make these assumptions. And then if you look down the track at all of these threads, if you were to go back under the bonnet and you go, okay, what about there's that person that you persisted with when no one else did? What about that time there was a client that only wanted to work with you in the end? What about that relationship where the person said in the card that
Yeah.
you changed their lives? So we kind of fix a story and we don't sort of go back and say, that original story that had 200,000 wires to it, and we just picked up two. Now we should go back every now and again and kind of, review that and to kind of recognize that these are not fixed qualities and they're not facts and yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating how you can debunk someone's thoughts on themselves and their opinion of others. Can people change?
Yeah. So people can change. Statistically, personality changes to about 30% across a lifestyle. So there's personality, natural tendencies and predispositions. So take, for example, my personality. Have a high degree on a profile tool, but evidence is that of interpersonal sensitivity, right? So, um, go me, that's why I become a psychologist, those sorts of things. At the same time, then I end up in a career where I generally get people who nobody else wants to say the thing to or haven't changed with the standard stuff, and me sitting around and agreeing with people doesn't get change. And so I've learned how to do that differently. I've learned how to be more direct and be more blunt and be more kind of challenging. And though I still, if I go to a restaurant and they give me the wrong meal, I'll still say thank you, that was fantastic, right? Because it's not loading on results, right? So my natural personality is there, but I can change. I think it's the thinking styles that hold people up. The idea that I can't change, the fact that we tell people that they can't change. There are very few things that can't be changed, and if they can't be changed, they can often be diluted or softened, and other variables can be amplified as a result of that. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah,
You say that you build yourself and you're more blunt. You're more
hmm
blunt to other people,
yeah, more direct. Yeah,
more direct. In the current space of this world, I'm gonna mention it once. The woke crowd.
yeah,
Being blunt to people like that
yeah,
can cause all sorts of unnecessary
yeah,
moments,
yeah,
as you may have witnessed around the world.
yeah,
But there's also a time where you need to tell someone, hey,
yeah.
this isn't the right thing. Or are you okay?
Yeah,
Are you trying to hide something? Are you trying to change something? All of this in the woke culture, I'm seeing that there there's trauma.
yeah,
They don't want to be the person they were assigned. I'm not
uh-huh.
going to go into the gender thing,
Yeah, sure.
but just the person that they've been assigned.
Mhm.
And they want to change. They
Yeah,
want to put a costume on.
uh-huh.
But in reality, they're not taking it head on. I feel like they're just running away.
Yeah,
I I observe this and I stay silent because I'm just living my own life,
yeah,
living my own dream and working on living my best life. But I can't help to think, but I want to help people like that.
Yeah, I keep getting that sense from you. It's about the third time I've understood,
Yeah,
like, you just being helpful to people is really
yeah.
important.
But at the same time, I feel
You
like
don't
I
wanna
need to,
divert from what you're
well, that too,
yeah,
but walking on eggshells
yeah.
where I don't want to feel like I'm being offensive.
So what do you think it looks like if you get it right? Not that there is a right, but, you're telling you kinda we're talking about what you don't
I'll,
wanna be,
I'll
yeah.
talk about the best case scenarios.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to be told, Sev, you were right.
Yep.
I'm better now.
Mhm.
I just want to see someone living their best life
Yeah.
where they're not complaining
Mhm.
about a foreign affair
Yeah.
they cannot actually do anything about
Yeah,
except for
totally.
be keyboard warriors.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're actually bettering themselves
Yeah.
through the physical,
Yeah.
psychological, and whatever else there is. They're working on themselves.
Yeah. I agree. I think, again, echoing your mum's wisdom, you know, that's the only thing you got the keys for, right? Um, and I think in terms of the stuff that you can't impact on, again, I sometimes have a picture in my mind of, take, for example, Trumpism or diversity rollbacks or like whatever that is. Okay, imagine you're in a major city and there's this underground thing of all the CCTV, cameras in the city, right? Like, that's on one of 5,000 cameras, right? It's not on all of the cameras. So do the same thing in your mind, right? It's one of 5,000. You can have a look at it, and when you're looking at it, it's definitely a thing and it definitely bothers you. But there's another 4,999 cameras that have other things on it. And anytime we get stuck on one camera, that's a you problem in terms of that. I think the other thing with the kind of the wokeness stuff, I think we're trying to get back a sense of control and identity and find our voice. But I'm with you, and I manage it like on social media. Sometimes I want to jump on and not react and not get
Oh,
emotional, but I want to say to people, well, that's kind of illogical, or I'm not really sure how you can kind of come to that. But I just go, you know what, Pete, this is not a race that needs you. There's other people that can do this better than you. You're best to spend your time and your energy on stuff that's, that you can really kind of
yeah.
impact on. But even, when I was on a panel for International Women's Day and or diversity kind of stuff, and people kind of say, do you sort of you know, share your pronouns or do you sort of, and I'm just like, you know what? I actually just think that there's a basic principle, which is be curious about people and what's important to them and he, him, they, them, the whole like I don't want to categorize people full stop. I don't want to celebrate women. I want to celebrate actually understanding what people need and what all the different qualities in humans and whether those qualities are in a male body or a female body or a cat or whatever. Like, why are we focusing on that sort of stuff? So I do sometimes encourage people to zoom out and also kind of recognize that, again, some things are they are just a moment in time. Like, I think wokeism will
Yeah.
auto-correct. I think, we'll kind of go, "Okay, we now get that everyone's different, and we now get not to make assumptions, but we also now need to not make sure every single thing everywhere is 50-50 and
Mm.
every all of that sort of stuff is" yeah.
Yeah. I conclude it with, what are your ideologies? What are your like real
Yeah.
human being
Yeah.
wishes? What do
Yeah.
you wish the world to be or
Yeah.
to have?
Yeah.
Prosperity, integrity,
Yeah.
you can go into peace,
Yeah.
and just everybody just being able to do what they want to do without harming anyone else.
Yeah.
That's it.
But I think what you're talking about is that people recognizing, and the word accountability, as I said, makes people want to go like this, but I think it starts with us.
Mm.
Everything starts with us. So an example that makes me giggle, but I'm very appropriate and I don't actually giggle, is, oh, could you please come and do a course on how to give feedback? And I'm like, how about I give a course about how to take feedback? Because if everyone could
Yeah.
take feedback,
Mm.
nobody would need to suddenly get their knickers in a knot about how do I give this feedback, right? Because if you can take feedback, then that's the kind of that's the thing. How can everybody, so it's not about it's not how can we get others to, it's like, how about you learn to figure out what's important to you, and how about you learn to speak up
Yeah.
about that, and how about you learn to take feedback, and about how you learn to say sorry, and how about you learn to, and then if that's the case, I think the world's going to be fine if everybody, if everybody did that.
How to take feedback. Is there a universal approach to that, or does it depend on one's archetype?
It's a good question, and I think it depends on the different stages that sort of people are at in life. I think if people have a basic premise of, A, I want to get better, and B, I can choose what I do with this feedback, but I have to take it. So take any feedback whatsoever, stick it in the luggage room or the warehouse or whatever up here, and then process it, and then go, no, there's of zero value to me.
So that's where you have to inoculate first.
Yeah, you do. I think you have to kind of pause that, and I think that is probably a universal kind of piece. And I think that we're our own worst enemies. We push it away because it's uncomfortable. But again, you just got 3 levels higher in the game, that the sooner you figure that out,
Mm.
In terms of feedback, feedback is obviously closely associated with excellence in anything. Once upon a time, athletes used to get feedback at the end of the season or the end of the game or the end of the race or the end of the meet, and now they rewatch their race or the game, and it's immediately, and they go through it, and and they know what they need to, and we know that everyone on the planet's going to get better. Are you going to get better when the 17th person tells you, or when the second person tells you? Totally up to you. Knock
Mm.
yourself out, and I think that's the attitude people need to have about feedback, like
Yeah.
the sooner we get it, sooner we absorb it, sooner we figure out the relevance of it. Having said that, I think one of the biggest challenges is some people have lost their sense of self so much that they go around getting feedback all the time, or they end up taking feedback. Somebody on social media says you're an idiot. Oh God, I'm confronted and I'm traumatized and I can't sleep and I can't, and and it's like, no, that person has a resume that's of zero value in telling you that you're an idiot. If your partner, who's known you for 20 years and is your biggest support, tells you you're an idiot, then their resume on, their credibility on telling you're an idiot, you should probably have a seat.
That's part of the Socratic method. Where is that information coming from?
Yeah.
Is there a time that information is not true?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
You're not an idiot.
Yeah.
So, getting to the bottom of that sort of thing is
Yeah.
it's always a fun exercise, but people just they don't have the time. They just get distracted by the next thing.
They do, but they also, again, these blanket bucketed kind of rules. Like in meetings, people go, "No, everyone has to speak," and I'm like, "Not really. If this is a financial strategy part of
Yeah.
of the meeting, I can tell you that what I add into that value is not
Mm.
very much. So maybe I'm quiet the whole meeting, and maybe that's the best possible outcome. If there's another time when we're talking about culture change or human behaviour or encouraging a whole team of people to lift, and I take 70% of the floor for that meeting, like fine." So even with kids, okay, you're making a decision about whether you should drink or not drink or whatever, and all your friends are going yes, and all your parents are going no, and oh, this is a dilemma. Well, not really. Whose opinion do you most trust on this particular topic?
Mm.
My cousin, who's 2 years older than me. Okay, great. Your cousin gets 70% of the sway here, the vote, because he cares about you, and he's done it, and he sees other people do it and make mistakes or not. So your cousin or your next door neighbour who's 2 years older than you and you play footy with, they get 70% of this. Your peers, well, they haven't done it very much. What do they know? Get 10% of this, and your parents might get, 10 or 20%. So yeah.
My final thing I want to talk about before we wrap it up, it's been a
Uh-huh.
great one, is regret.
Yeah.
How many clients have you had over the years, and more particular older ones,
Uh-huh.
who have talked to you and said, I should have done all of that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot. I think sometimes people wind up incredibly unhappy because they get fixated on regret. And that's where they'll often end up seeing a coach or a psychologist or and or they find it hard to talk to most people about their regrets. So that's the space, that's what they'll use that for. I think what I notice about regret is, I guess, two key themes, again, to sort of keep a complex topic brief. The first one is that when you think about regret, there's a false assumption there that you know what that pathway would have bought you, right? So, oh, I should have bought a block then, or I should have stayed in that marriage, well, you actually don't, you have no idea. You don't have an alternative reality. You're assuming that all factors would be the same, but I stayed with Sally and didn't leave. Like, maybe you stayed with Sally and Sally got tough or wasn't or maybe you stayed with Sally, but you never understood what it was to what you were really missing in your life. Or so the first thing around regret is it's good to reflect and be vulnerable, but you actually can't truly have regret because you have no idea where that pathway would have led you and all the different tributaries off that. So you can't regret or envy that so and so is driving a Tesla and you're driving a Ford Focus, with apologies to anyone who's driving a Ford Focus. You go, oh, I wish I had that. Well, not really, because maybe the person has sexual dysfunction. Maybe they are crippled with anxiety, and maybe they've got a Tesla. So you want that life? Knock yourself out. You don't know that life. You don't know that regret.
What
Yeah.
about doing the hard things,
Uh-huh.
not pursuing comfort?
Yeah.
And because you said this, you're saying doing hard things, not pursuing comfort is where a rewarding life is found.
Totally.
But if you went through life not
Yeah.
doing any of that and then you have regret
Yeah.
because of that,
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
More of.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I think most of my clients, genuinely the ones that have no regrets and or have led an incredibly satisfying life, as well as thinking of the ones that do have regrets, I think those principles hold true on both tests.
Really?
Absolutely. I really do. I really think that people get to this thing. I mean, everything in the body and biology, as I said, even you think about, you want to be fit, right? You got to get sore first. You got to do little micro tears in the muscle before you cannot get better or stronger or feel more deeply. You can't love truly unless you've had loss. You can't, you know, handle an argument better unless you've been through an awful one where you didn't handle yourself well. So I genuinely think that a rewarding life comes from those things, and that concept of you can't know joy if you don't know sorrow, you can't, all of those sorts of things.
One more example. What if I worked a job for 40, 50, even almost 60 years,
Yeah.
and then I regretted it after that,
Yeah.
not trying other things?
Yeah. I think, that's really common, people kind of going, I had 6 or 7 or 8 intersections during those times where someone said, "Hey, I'm leaving the team and I'm doing a startup. Do you want to come?" Or, "There's a chance to get posted here," or, "I might quit and go back to study for a year." Like, I genuinely think that it's just, if you can be at peace with that, and I think that's great, but most people aren't at peace with that. Most people feel like
That's what I mean.
they've lived life diluted and safely, and you get to the end of, here's the image that I have, we're all born with 20 cents, and you can put it in the coin slot any time, and you might just lose it, right? It might be a vending machine, one of those, you just put it in and you just lost it, nothing comes out, no money comes out, no drink comes out, whatever. Or you could put it in and, like a jackpot, $17,000 comes out, or 5 muesli bars come out instead of, and people die with their 20 cents in their hand, because they didn't want to lose it. And they're like, yep, I got it. I'm not one of those people who lost it. And you go, actually, how satisfying is that? And I think people intrinsically know that, it just doesn't lead to color. I'm not saying you have to do it all the time and every time, but I'm just saying it's really where the magic comes from. Yeah.
My own interpretation or my own opinion on the working the one job and then talking to the 75, 80-year-olds
Yeah.
who do regret it.
Mm-hmm.
You say that regret doesn't exist. But when I hear those people, those old folks going, I wish I changed careers more
Yeah.
than once.
Yeah.
What is that if it's not regret?
I mean, I wouldn't say it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that you can't say what that would have been like. I think you can say, I wish I had dared to try it, but you can't say that would have been a better life or a worse life, or, so that's what I would say to somebody who's struggling with regret and is already 80. I'd say, look, you have no idea what the other path would have been. It could have been all joy and, cars with the rooftop down and whatever, and then maybe it ended, early or whatever. So I think regret teaches us things, and I think you can say that with regret, as I said, you can't live a parallel life. But I think that 80-year-old coming back to talk to you and I and anyone listening would say, this, you just got one shot at this thing we call life. And as you said, your very first kind of comment, that living your best life stuff, it's the only thing you're really in charge of.
You
Yeah.
give it a crack, or you're
Yeah.
giving it a crack. And
Yep.
if you are 80 and you weren't happy that you worked FIFO your whole life,
Yep.
and then you wound up wherever you are,
Yep.
and you could have done this, you
Yeah.
could have done that. Sure,
Yep.
could have.
Yeah.
The alternative could have been better, could have been worse.
Yeah.
But they choose to not be happy in that moment and look at that regret. Okay, well, what can you do about it now at 80?
Yeah.
But then there's a discussion about prevention.
Yeah.
You don't want to regret it when you're 80
Yeah.
by not taking the chance, by not
Yeah.
doing the hard
Yeah.
things. And that's also true.
Yeah.
Like I see people who don't take risks, but then they're also, the alternative for not taking that risk is doing the same thing.
Well, you would have seen that in teaching, right?
Yeah.
People who might, well, it's reliable, it's got,
But it's not, the
but you,
taking the leap is not for
yeah,
everybody either.
no, it's not. But I also think, there's micro ways to do that, right? You could
Yeah.
stay in the same job, but try other things. You could stay in the same job, but work on other parts of your personality. You could stay in the same job, but do other hobbies, or better your relationship, or be curious about your barriers, or, there are so many different, again, I'm just not into this binary thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
One piece of advice you'd have for anyone out there, what would it be?
You have so much more potential than you know that you do. There is so much more in your control than you think that there is. Yeah, and I just see that all the time. Every time someone says, "Isn't your job depressing?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Get to see people who think something's can't happen, impossible, trauma, heartache, setbacks, and see them absolutely rise. And yeah, I just wish people knew that.
Absolutely. And when they get to a low point in their life and then they see that that's their bottom depths of hell, they rise up
They
from
do.
there.
Yeah,
But why does it take?
the tough things. Yeah. I mean, I think it takes the tough things often to just get rid of all of the crap around us, that all of that stuff suddenly goes, okay, that's actually not going to serve me and it's inconsequential. This is a moment. I also think that, ultimately we don't know, like, the hard things. We don't know our potential until we're pushed for it. An athlete doesn't know they can jump higher until they have to. You don't know that you can sit up all night until you become a parent. You don't know that you can sit up all night and be exhausted and then still get up and, kind of that it's even possible or capable until you have to do it. And so I think there's a lot of things where we only stretch when there's absolutely no alternative. And so that's why again, it's hard. It's hard to sort of do. One of the challenges is that when people find those low moments, the two differences is whether they see that that's going to persist forever or they see that it's temporary in the, and if you see that it's temporary, you can feel it and be in it and, recognize that, what's the learning and how do I get through it?
Yeah. So, Peta Slocombe. Ladies and gentlemen, today we spoke about many things, how Peter became a psychologist, but more importantly, all the little bits and pieces that come with it. 33 years.
Hmm.
Incredible. Thank you for being here and discussing it. This was great. It's been an hour and a half just like that.
Thank you. It's such a privilege, but I love talking about it, and I love your take and your constant, whether people message you or whether people, you observe in teaching, or your constant desire to be helpful is not to be underestimated.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
nice.
Are you taking on clients? Is there a specific criteria? Anyone? Everyone?
You know what? I often say to people, if I can find someone for you that does that well, like, you should absolutely do it. Let me try, or let me help, or let me make sure that you've done all you can do for yourself first. I do take on, I'm in the fortunate privilege professionally with my business that I can take on whoever I want. But yeah, as I said, I think for mostly it's just about making sure that that they have done what they need, or that that I can be helpful. So yeah, nice. Okay,
Thank you for
thank
being on the
you.
show.